Coming to you from the greatest city in the world, this is the #1 showbiz podcast. It's Talk for Two. Here's your host, Matt Bailey.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gary, and thanks real quick to our season sponsors, Axtel Expressions and the Tangent Bound Network. Today is really awesome because my two worlds collide again in a big way. Talk for Two welcomes another celebrity guest who will be performing at my college in the Schimmel Center this Saturday, March 12th at 7:30 p.m. Ana Gasteyer is, of course, one of the legendary Saturday Night Live alumni, as well as a star of the Broadway stage and a recording artist. The show she's bringing to Pace is a vaudeville-inspired cabaret called I'm Hip. She has an album also called I'm Hip, but did you know that the show came a few years before the record? In addition to discussing the album, Ms. Gasteyer and I chatted about her time at SNL, her entertainment inspirations, and the recent Grease Live on Fox. To get tickets to Anna's show, as I know many of you, especially if you're listening here in Manhattan, I know many of you want to see her live, walk over to the Schimmel box office to get them in person for $10 student tickets if you go to Pace. If you don't go to Pace and you're listening to this and you want to come to the show, go to schimmel.pace.edu for full price tickets. Here now to give us the delicious dish, I'm sorry, I had to, on bringing I'm Hip to the Schimmel, our interview with Ana Gasteyer. Ms. Ana Gasteyer, welcome to the show today. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm great. We're so excited to have you coming to Pace this Saturday at 7:30. It's going to be a lot of fun. Tell us a little bit about I'm Hip, the album and the show. You had the act before the album, right?
The act came before the album and has obviously followed the album around as we promote it, and I have toured with it. I have two careers. I have a comedy career and I have a musical theater career. And as that's kind of, I've lived these two lives, I think I started to want to create something that lived somewhere in between and that was sort of more authentically the marriage of the two parts of myself. And that's what I'm Hip is. It's really more of I like to think of it as like a, big fun cocktail party where we can all have a good time. It's kind of throwbacky and, which I am too, and it's kind of in a perfect world, everybody would get dressed up and come with a flask. As far as I'm concerned, it's I think I definitely take inspiration from a Supper Club era that's ridiculous and fun and not too serious. I think it's funny when you do music theater, there's such a sort of expectation that people ask you to sing. It's a very kind of earnest undertaking, and I love musical theater. Love it. Love playing the characters, but I hate doing it in public when I'm not actually in costume and doing it. So, eventually I sort of sat down and thought, if I'm going to do an act, what's fun to me and interesting to me is what I'm Hip, was born out of.
That's really, really cool. And I've heard you say before that it kind of lives in an entertainer's era. So talk a little bit more about the development of the show. I think it's wonderful. You've hit something that it's fun and it's funny, but you don't have to be in a character from Saturday Night Live or a Broadway character.
Yeah, I think, in the olden days, honestly, and by olden days, I mean this entertainers era, the late 50s, early 60s, which is really where so much of the music lives. It just wasn't, you were kind of expected to do both. If you listen to anyone, Dinah Shore, Dean Martin, Annie Kay, anyone, Sarah Vaughan, people told good jokes in between great numbers, and there was kind of a sense of I'm going out for an evening of entertainment, and it's not like to see a comedian versus a real legit singer. It didn't have this kind of either or quality to it, and so much of the music that I love is slightly ridiculous in nature, and frankly, jazz. That's what I call this kind of genre. I call it ridiculous jazz. It's my made up name, but this kind of world. It's very loose and interpretive and very collaborative, and the band is very pivotal to what I do. It's more fun for me to play with other people on stage and have a good time with them. And I'm surrounded by great musicians, especially a show in New York, which is always great because I have my local guys. And that's a band I've worked with a lot at this point. A lot of them are actually on the record. And it's always kind of extra fun to work with them because we have such a shorthand, you know?
Yeah, yeah, that's really cool. You pointed to something about the era and the music. Why do you think we've lost that style of music in the mainstream? Because it is so rich and vibrant and fun, jazz.
Yeah, I don't know why we've lost it. I mean, I think that there's obviously we live in a very digital and image-driven time, and I think that at the essence of this is a sort of rich musical experience. I can't believe I just used the word rich. It's like my mother, but when you're doing a live, for example, all of it comes down to sort of money and production value, and I always insist on traveling with a quintet, which is a pretty big band for a small performance group. Generally speaking, the money-making people out there would prefer that you travel with a piano.
Yeah.
That's it, because it's expensive, right? And it's all being taken out of your overhead, but it creates such a fun, convivial, live music experience, and you have to really rely on actual musicianship and not just, I sound like a fuddy-dud, but, that it's not just nobody's adjusting it, nobody's Frankensteining anything, nobody's making somebody sound like they can't sound. And so, I don't know. I don't know why we've lost it, except that I think that, that live music ends up being a very personal and very, it's a very intimate and very social experience,
Yes, absolutely.
And that's actually what has ended up being very fun for me, because so much of my life happens on screen, and so much of my career has happened on screen, especially since, I basically became a television actress, 20 years ago. So for me, it's been great. It's been like an antidote to that, and I feel like I've grown so much just from having to go. Last week I was in Iowa and Baton Rouge, and being out on the road, you really shake yourself free of this kind of isolated, snobby New York, LA attitude.
What do you love most about engaging with the fans who get to come and see you and know you from your film career, but then, like you said, you tour all over? What do you love most about getting out and getting on that first love of the stage with them?
What do I love about it most?
Yeah, what do you love about being out there and engaging with them?
For starters, I think, I'm really, it's a tough question, because I love the immediacy, and I'm loving getting into this point in my career where I actually have a history. It's really nice.
Yeah.
Of course, it's so fun to play off of a live audience without interruption, without commercials, without, kind of any larger concern. Everyone's there. They bought a ticket because they theoretically like you, and are excited to be there. And then it's just nice because I feel I feel lucky that audiences are giving me the opportunity to kind of to play something that I wouldn't be allowed to do on television, which is to sort of settle into the more musical side of myself. Everybody obviously knows I did. If you're a fan of mine from SNL anyway, you know that I did a lot of music on the show. But this is, legit. It's actually more authentically who I am. I was a trained singer. That's how I started. And then I sort of backpedaled out because I went to college in Chicago where improv comedy was born, and I met, a million comedians, and I am a comedian, and I sort of found my people. But then to be able to really sing in a comfortable way, it took a long time to do that. And so I think I feel fortunate, and I feel grateful to those audiences for letting me be more than one person and letting me wear more than one hat. Because in this, like I said, in this era, people get very grumpy about it. What are you? Are you a comedian or are you a musician? Either or. Especially music people. They get really mad about it. But, truth is, most comedians I know are great musicians. It's a very rhythm-oriented genre, People wear more than one hat. And really, the other truth is, the other acting truth, and again, everyone's different, and there's no roadmap, but the one thing you can say consistently about most careers that are long-term is that people are wearing more than one hat when they're doing that. They're either writing for themselves, or they're producing for themselves, or they're, in my case, I have a musical career, and I have a theater career, and I have a TV career, and I kind of have to keep them all going at all times. Otherwise, I would have major downtime,
Absolutely. And is it weird knowing when you're in a Broadway show, and then we'll get to the SNL stuff in a minute, that when you're in a Broadway show or you're on stage where you can't interact with the audience, how does it feel knowing they're there to see you because you're a name in the cast, but you can't interact with them like you can on stage in concert?
That's basically the answer to your previous question, which is a really smart observation. Yeah, I mean, you're behind a fourth wall, and there's a comfort to that, and that's its own game, right? That's its own, like, it's a very private, that fourth wall thing is really real. It's really comforting. But it's very private. It's like you're in a intimate experience that people are bearing witness to. But you're right that there is a complete break of the fourth wall, for lack of a better way to say it, in my own act, where it's very much about my audience. I'm there because I know that they're fans and because I'm engaging with them, and it's an evening that we're sharing that's very private between us, as opposed to witnessed. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes total sense. I do want to switch gears here. Let's talk about SNL, and I want to kick it off with a fan question. This is always fun. During your tenure, who played the most pranks on set?
Pranks. I guess it would be Will. I mean, it's funny. It's such an unconventional kind of comedy over there, in the sense that it's like, people always go, "Oh, were you the class clown?" And it's funny, like 80% of the people on SNL were not the class clown; they were more the wise ass in the back row, which is sort of a different move in some ways. I mean, I think there are arguably some people who were the class clowns, maybe up front and center, but someone like Will, like, lives on this. He almost like Andy Kaufman-esque level of observational comedy, and he definitely did things. I wouldn't call them pranks, but he like he would personify people for weeks at a time. Like, there was a sketch that he and Norm Macdonald did early in my tenure there that was like a Smokey and the Bandit thing, and he was dressed as, Norm Macdonald would play Burt Reynolds, and he played Jerry. I don't remember what the guy's name was. His counterpart, and he basically dressed as him for the sketch, and then he was always in high demand, and it was a really busy blocking day. It was a Friday, and he couldn't get out of that. It was a pre-tape, that's what it was. So he was in the costume, but he didn't have time to change out, so he was doing every scene dressed as Jerry Reed, this counterpart to the Burt Reynolds character. Right. And so I don't know, people started rousing him, and whatever, just daring him and what have you. And Adam McKay, who is now his colleague at Gary Sanchez and Funny or Die. I know so many movies that they've done together, but they put together very early on. And I think McKay dared him to stay in that for the whole weekend. And then somebody dared him to stay in it for good nights. And then basically, I think he wore it nonstop for like the next month and a half, at least, maybe the rest of the season. And he did every good night, like that one season, like every good night, no matter what, he would dress into that.
Oh, that's
changes
funny.
into it was just like this kind of really bad 70s trucker outfit. Like, it wasn't even really like, there was nothing, it wasn't like a clown suit. It was just like sort of a bad outfit, if that makes any sense. And he could like double down and commit into it so hard, and just wore it every day. So he had that kind of thing that he would do all the time, which I wouldn't exactly call a prank, because if you were like in the group, if you were one of us, it was just like, oh, there's Will dressed as Jerry Reed, like, this part of his bag, and people would, have fun with him around it, but it wasn't like anyone. But then, like, some of the people, like, above the line, like the suits, it just infuriated them and confused them, and they didn't understand why he was, but they could sort of like separate the men from the boys of like who was fun. Like our costume designer, Tom Broker, totally got it and was like, would just take it on Sunday and get it dry cleaned and bring it back. Just like understood that he enjoyed it. So there were things like that quite a bit. A ton of late night bits, a ton of just, horseshit, and the show is always, your audience is largely college audience, like it's this eternally like finals week. Yeah. It's just basically a nonstop. So imagine all of the horseshit that you do, when you're trying not to study. Yeah. So because our writing night was on Tuesday night. Those nights were just frenetic and insane and panicked and procrastinative and, just ridiculous. I mean, so most of the bits happened that way, not really, in my experience, on camera as much. There was so much that would go down on a Tuesday night. We got in trouble for prank calling people because we were such idiots. We didn't realize that, like, the phone system would trace to our office because we were, like, on our own, but we would, like, prank call people in the building at, like, 3, 4 in the morning, and then, we'd get yelled at the next day because they were like, did you guys call somebody in human resources last night? Like at NBC. So it was just stuff like that,
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. And since you mentioned those Tuesday night writing sessions, tell us about Delicious Dish. And was that one of those Tuesday night writing sessions? How did that sketch come to be?
I did that sketch with the Groundlings, which is where I came out of. Yeah, I wrote it with a woman named Leslie Newton, and it was based loosely off of a really boring cooking show on the NPR station in Los Angeles. Yeah. And then I auditioned, I think, with the character. I mean, which is to say, like, in your audition personnel, you do, like, a bunch of characters. And then that was one of mine. Mm-hmm. And then somebody, I think McKay, was like, you should do that on the show, So we ended up doing it. And then it was a great combination it was Robert Carlock, who is Tina Fey's sort of right-hand man now. And this guy, Dennis McNicholas, who was the head writer at the show for some time. And then it was me. And it was incredibly fun. It was always really challenging. It was always me fighting for the characters and them putting, the characters in a compromised situation. So that's sort of the essence of what makes a great sketch, I think.
Because I'm sure people are still coming up to you and going, "Hey, sweaty balls."
Yeah, that one will never be down. Yeah,
will never. Yes, and I'm going to switch gears one more time, and then we'll get back to the show, close with the show. But it just happened, Grease Live. You were incredible. Yeah. You were incredible. I got to know.
Oh, thank you so much.
How strenuous was the process, and would you do it again?
I would definitely do it again. The process was incredibly strenuous. It's certainly no more strenuous than doing any kind of musical theater, which is the most. If SNL is the most last minute, then musical theater is the most rehearsed and most strenuous in some ways because it's so precise. But this was kind of a weird marriage of the two. There was a ton of preparation in some ways, and in some ways we were utterly unprepared for what happened. I mean, it was so ambitious in what they attempted to do and what they managed to pull off with regards to, I feel like I can say as somebody who did a live television show for 6 years, it's very hard to communicate at home to your audience that it's live. Yeah. That it's really going down in that moment, and kind of the excitement of that. It's so easy to lose that through that little box. And I do think they did such an exceptional job of communicating the here and the now of it, and kind of modern moves like, showing those girls taking their selfies and all that stuff in that opening sequence with Jessie J, and really, really showing traffic, which I thought was inspired beyond words. And I think kind of was what made it. It was really hair-raising because no one had done it before, I think probably with the exception of myself. Yeah. There were some people who worked on Dancing with the Stars, quite a few, the DP amongst others, and there were several of the, hair and makeup and costumers that had worked on Dancing with the Stars, which is a live show, but it's still and yet a very different kind of live show where you don't have kind of persona in the way that we did. You don't have a story to tell, things like that. Yeah. No. So I think it was like, for example, there are nothing but quick changes, fast costume changes on Broadway and in SNL, and I've done plenty of them in my career. I've done them as short as 35 seconds before, and that's fast change. These were changes that were. I had one, my fastest change was 3 minutes, and I thought, oh, yeah, no big deal. That's an easy change. It's like a commercial break. But I forgot that we're like halfway across the lot. So, you have to account in like a good 50 seconds between running out of the building, getting on a golf cart, 25 seconds travel, getting off and getting into the set and getting on stage and set. You know what I mean? Yeah. So those things, we did rehearse some, but it was very stressful on the day in terms of, adjusting to some of those things.
But good stress, I hope fun stress did.
Yeah, I mean, but again, without a live dress, without SNL, the thing that they have going for them is they've done it for 40 years. Nothing changes in that machinery.
Yeah.
It's totally a shitstorm every week, but it's a known and established shitstorm, and, people know how to help you. This was like, my hairdresser was a wreck. Everybody was a wreck. No one had done it before. Nobody had really, so, and little things, which were really significant. The crowd noise was so deafening. Mm-hmm. You couldn't hear it at home, but like, when we were doing that opening sequence, I sang a little ditty with to men, right. And you couldn't hear the track because mm-hmm. it was like this One Direction concert of fans around you, because they were like screaming at this like girl, boy band concert pitch.
That's crazy.
Which is nuts, So there were things like that if you did it weekly, it would adjust to,
Yeah, that's wonderful. Well, we're running out of time here. I want to switch back to the show. I'd love to talk to you more. Please come back when you have time. This is fun. I want to get back to this show that we have Saturday. I know we talked about it earlier with your band and some of the people that had done the record. But anything else you're really looking forward to about performing here at home in New York, and specifically at our
Well,
wonderful
it's in New York.
Schimmel?
I literally live directly across the river. I couldn't be more excited to have hometown friends there. I've been out on the road so much. The other thing is I have to say I'm really excited, frankly, that it's at a university, and there'll be like young, hip musical theater people there, essentially.
Yeah.
And because that's very much my sweet spot and my favorite audience. It's where I play the best, telling stories and doing bits that are ridiculous and having a good time.
It's your stuff that we love, and it's your era. Unfortunately, I didn't get to see you in Wicked, but you are a phenomenal talent. But speaking of our generation and your time at SNL, that's the stuff we're pulling up on YouTube. That's
fantastic to hear that.
That's the stuff that is kind of like our classic SNL. So that's why we love you so much, because you're such a part of our sort of coming up with us in our comedy, and our love of comedy. So that's
awesome.
That's why
I talk about it a little bit. I sing a whole lot. I try things like playing the violin, which is hilarious and upsetting depending who you are, and we try to keep it as lively and ridiculous as we can.
Lively and ridiculous. Well, I got to let you go. I'm excited, but I have one last question. I never let my guests escape without this. Since you mentioned those musical theater people, what is your one piece of advice for people who want to pursue a career in the industry?
My one piece of advice is, I alluded to it earlier, the more that you can become a master of the production side of things, the better you're going to be in the long run, because if you can produce your own records, if you can produce your own shows, if you can write your own material, if you can, having that hand of authority in keeping something going creatively it's a lifeline for a career. It just puts you in an infinitely better position than sitting around and waiting to be cast. And also I always say to young people, people at the beginning, I should say, because sometimes they're old and starting. This is a cheesy thing to say, but you've got to be your own personal biggest cheerleader, and you've got to look for positive signposts where they are. You've got to decide what those are, and not ever apologize. If you're not really working, but you want to be an actor, and you've made a choice, like, I'm trying to be an actor for a living. You just have to when someone asks you what you do for a living, you say, I'm an actor. Because there are a million people that will tell you not to do it. Mm-hmm. A million people. I had a million people tell me not to do it. I had my parents, I had I had casting directors. It's very easy to find anyone to back up a position of no. So you've got to be the one that's saying yes inside, I think. It's the most important thing.
And that's a wonderful note to end this on. Ms. Ana Gasteyer, thank you so much for being with us. I am so excited for Saturday, and I will see you then. Thank you so much.
I'll be there with bells on. Thanks for look forward to you coming out.
Thank you, Ana. I cannot wait to see you on Saturday night. Tickets are available at schimmel.pace.edu. Student tickets are available in person at the box office for $10. But hurry, they are going really fast. That's all tickets all around. That's this Saturday, March 12th at 7:30 p.m. I'm so excited. That's it for us this week. Thank you again to our season sponsors, Axtel Expressions and the Tangent Bound Network. Stay tuned to talkfor2.com on Twitter and Facebook for more. Reach out by emailing talkfor2cast@gmail.com and talk about us using hashtag talkfor2. Signing off for Talk for Two, I'm Matt Bailey, reminding everyone out there to keep talking for two.
You can hear more show business interviews with the stars at talkfor2.com, where you'll also find one-of-a-kind products to improve your own show. That's talk, the number 4, TWO.com.